Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome back to my channel. I'm David Mathis. I really appreciate you guys' support. You guys, the outreach, the comments, all the likes, the shares, it means a lot to me. So if you are enjoying the content, please like, subscribe, and share. Make sure you hit that little notification button too so you know when new content's coming out, because I'm cranking out stuff regularly to try to help you guys answer some questions about training, nutrition, lifestyle, some of the experiences that I've gone through, anything that I can do to provide value and help you guys out. Shoot me a DM, ask me to make a video, and I'll see what I can do. Today though, I want to take some time and I'm going to actually turn this into a two-part series, so make sure you hit that notification so you can know when the next one comes out. But I want to tell a little bit about my story. I want to talk about how I got to where I am right now as an online strength and physique coach, finishing up my master's in exercise science at the University of South Florida, how I got involved with my mentor and one of my best friends, Lane Norton and Holly Baxter, and just talk a little bit about my past history with my eating disorder, my anxiety, my OCD, and how what's something that nearly took my life and devastated my life has actually turned into my saving grace. So this first part of this two-part series, like I said before, about my story, is to try to explain to you a little bit about my past, what led to my eating disorder, some of the thoughts and behaviors that were associated with it. And then in the second part, I want to talk about how I took those situations, those experiences, those life lessons, those hardships that I went through, and turn them into something positive. To first understand how I came about getting my eating disorder, my OCD, my anxiety, I think we have to go back to the very beginning. Now, I learned this through therapy. Do not be afraid to get therapy, guys. Talk to a professional, okay? You'll see later on in the story that professional therapy and counseling really helped me tremendously, okay? As a kid, had a pretty normal, all-American upbringing, right? My parents did get divorced when I was 5, but in all honesty, I don't think it really affected me all that much. I had the best divorce situation I think you could possibly think of, as far as parents getting along, my dad and my stepdad getting along, my dad being in the picture still and living in the same town. So not a lot of things seemed too off. But what you have to understand is that everything that happens to you as a kid somehow comes back and, I don't want to say it changes you, but it affects your life later on. And I come to find out that that incident led to a lot of insecurities with me. It led to a lot of fear of people abandoning me, right? Even though there was no abandoning that happened, it's just that simple act. So things that happen to you as a kid definitely shape the way that we think and that we act later on. So fast forward a few years, through my pre-teen years into my teen years, active into sports, loved sports, still do to this day, right? What American male probably does not like sports. Was very active, had a lot of friends, went on vacations with family, got to experience a lot of great things, right? No trauma whatsoever. My second oldest sister, Lindsay, went to Arizona State for exercise science. I was about 13 years old, and that's when I first figured out that, hey, you can actually go to school for exercise science, right? I love to train. I was an athlete at the time. I always had the envision of going in and being an athletic trainer or working with a college team in some capacity or a professional team. So that kind of got my eye on the whole exercise realm. Continued playing sports through high school, got involved with, I had a high school girlfriend whose dad was very into fitness and nutrition, Ironmans, triathlons, things like that. So that kind of piqued my interest a little bit more into digging a little bit deeper into nutrition, into training. And as soon as high school got over with, I went off to college, didn't compete, for collegiately in sports at that point, and really just started focusing my efforts in on the gym. Well, during that time, went through a bad breakup. It's one of those where, your first love, it kind of crushes you. You don't really know how to handle it. I slipped into a bit of a depression for a little while at that point. Later on, finding that things kept adding to that, and that depression never went away. It just kind of kept going, kept growing. I'm sure some of you guys can feel the same way, right? Just things build off of each other. Shortly after that breakup, one of my close friends from childhood was tragically killed in a car accident. And that just devastated myself, my friends, my support system. And I didn't really know how to handle that. That was the first time that, mortality kind of really came into play as far as somebody like my age, like obviously grandparents died, other people had died, but when you see somebody that your age, your friend that you experience so much stuff with, suddenly pass away, it affects you in a negative way, in a very strong way too. And all these things kept building on each other. And then shortly after that, my family up and moved to Las Vegas. My stepdad got an amazing job out there as a foreman on a construction company that built like the new casinos, built the new Wynn, stuff like that. So it felt like everything in this short amount of time in my life just got uprooted, just changed, suddenly went in a different direction. Fell into a little bit deeper of a depression. So kind of had a good support system, had some great friends through college, helped me through it, had fun during college, but still kind of in the back of my mind was battling some of this stuff. Fast forward a few more years out of college, I was working down in Florida, didn't really like my job, so I actually ended up going and getting some personal training certifications and starting my career as a trainer, as a health coach, whatever you want to call it, right? Before I really knew too much about online coaching. That's where I kind of started noticing that my exercise was kind of a coping mechanism for a lot of the stress and a lot of the frustration, fear I was going through of being on my own, still battling some of that depression, right? This was about 2007 time period. 2008 hit and the economy just, it crashed. I don't know how many of you guys are old enough to remember that, but it was a pretty bad time. And I knew that I wanted to go back to school because I knew I wanted to pursue exercise science a little bit more or something in the health field, right? So I joined the Army, and I joined the Army as a combat medic. This is still to this day the most honorable thing I ever did and so proud of, but it was also the start of where I saw my eating disorder come into play. I was about 24 when I went into the Army, and it just completely disrupted my life, which it sounds obvious, right? Like it's going to change everything. But I went from having like complete control over everything to losing control. And for a type A personality like me, and maybe some of you guys, that doesn't set well, right? I started to become fearful. Not fearful of like the Army or dying or anything like that. I just felt uneasy. I just felt fearful about everything around me. That sense of abandonment, like when my family left and my friend died and my girlfriend left me, that kind of sense of abandonment that I felt from my parents getting divorced, all that was still ramping up inside of me. And it led to me wanting to take control back, right? And I did that in the form of excessive exercise and restricting food. Looking back on some of the things that I did during that time, as far as getting up at 3 a.m. and going to the gym before I went to Army PT, right? And then hitting the gym later on, and just not eating enough to fuel my activity, right? Being on that high stress level, falling into that regimen as far as in the Army where, everything's got to be perfect. And that just aligned with my type A personality already, and I took that to an extreme. That led to my OCD, my clinically diagnosed OCD. I had to eat the same things at the same time, the same way. I had to get this many exercises in, right? I had to outdo myself from the day before because it's always more, more, more. It's always, you can do more, you need to do more. And rest is for the weary. So all these mentalities, all these experiences that I went through were shaping my train of thought unconsciously, and it was leading me to do some very, very dangerous things with my health. And this is no joke, guys. I am not even kidding on this. I would seriously do 1,000 to 1,500 burpees a day, split up like 3 or 4 different times during the day. I would constantly walk everywhere because as soon as I got done with a meal, I needed to walk it off. I needed to release that anxiety. I needed to take my mind off of things, and I did not like feeling full. This, I found out later, dates back to basic training when, as soon as we got done with eating, we had to go out and do pull-ups or push-ups or running or something like that. So it kind of just got instilled in my mind frame. But I also took it the extreme because I was using it as a coping mechanism. My eating disorder, my OCD, my anxiety, everything I was doing was to try to calm myself down because I felt like I was running 1,000,000 miles an hour. I felt like my mind was racing, like I could not settle down. So I was always trying to outwork it, right? I was always trying to do something more physically. I was trying to do something to take my mind off of it. So I was always constantly moving. And it started wearing my body down, right? I mean, I did everything. I hoarded food. I over-exercised. I didn't eat for periods of time, right? I never took laxatives. I never purged myself by making myself throw up. Mine was mostly done by over-exercising, right? And just under-eating. The one thing I want you to know about eating disorders and anxiety, OCD, depression, things like that is it feels like you have no control. And what you do, the negative outcomes, the negative things, actions that you take are all just to try to cope with those feelings of fear and doubt. And I didn't realize this all until I met with a therapist. I went to inpatient facility off and on for 3 years, right? I was laying up in the hospital on base from beginning of December 2012 until January 2013 in the ICU because my heart rate got down into the high 20s, okay? I was in the ICU. They called my parents, flew them up to base because I was not supposed to make it through the night. I was 94 pounds, okay? 94 pounds. I'm sure some of you guys have followed my story a little bit on my IG and I've posted pictures. It was scary. It was a scary time in my mind. I've described it to therapists. I've described it to people as though I was up here looking down on myself and not having any control over what was going on. I knew what I was doing, but I could not stop. It is an illness, okay? No matter what people say, it is an illness. And it's still something that when you seek help, you're still going to have to battle from time to time, but you find coping mechanisms. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the next part of the video. But I just wanted to explain to you some of the actions, some of the things that I did to take them to extremes that led me towards my destruction. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, I had nothing. I shied away from people. I didn't talk to my family for a long time. I shut my sisters out. My mom, my dad, we just didn't have the same relationship for a long time because they were scared. And I was scared. I didn't want them to be a part of the hell that I was going through on the inside because the eating disorder, the OCD, the anxiety was all symptoms of what was going on the inside. It's not about the food. It's not about the body image for most people. Most of the time it starts with stuff that's going on in here, or you're not connecting spiritually or emotionally. You feel lonely, fearful, scared, things like that. I spent a little bit of time while I was still in the Army in a inpatient facility where I got healthier. I was able to return back to duty, finish out my contract. Then when I got out and I was on my own, felt that sense of fear again, right? Loneliness, didn't know what to do. If any of you guys have ever been in the military and you transition back to civilian life, it can be a very, very difficult transition. And I mentally was not 100% ready. And it crushed me again and I relapsed. And I found myself for almost 5 months in another inpatient rehab facility where I sought help, where I was very fortunate that the VA helped me out with those costs. I know the VA gets a lot of bad rap, but they did so much above and beyond for me that I can't thank them enough. There I met with therapists and other people that were going through similar things that I was, and I was able to work through issues enough to, when I was healthy, get out and continue to see a therapist, continue to day by day keep building on the coping mechanisms that I learned. And it's going to be different for everybody, right? What works for me might not work for you. But the big thing I want you to remember is you got to take away from this is you have to want to make the choice. For so long I didn't seek help because I didn't want to. I was scared. I didn't know what I was doing was really that bad until I nearly lost my life. Eating disorders are not something that just affect women. They affect men. They affect younger people, older people, Asians, Europeans, African Americans, Caucasians. It does not matter, guys. We all go through the same underlying issues from time to time, and we have that fear, that doubt, that lack of self-confidence, things that take over ourselves, and we look to take control back. My form of it was over-exercising, under-eating, developing the eating disorder, developing my OCD because I wanted things. I wanted to know when I was doing things. I wanted that comfort. I wanted to be in control of what went in my mouth, how much exercise I did, what I was doing when. So I took that to the extreme, and that led to my eating disorder that exasperated my OCD, my anxiety, my fear. The big thing I found out is that I was a very fearful person. Fearful of taking chances, fearful of what happened to me in my past, fearful of what's going to happen to me in the future. And that led down to my destruction. Eating disorders are not something to joke around about, guys. OCD is not something to joke around about. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I've got OCD because I don't like to clean my house. That is not obsessive compulsive disorder. Okay, that's being a neat freak. Two separate things. And it's very important that you learn to empathize with people, even if you don't understand what they're going through, when it comes to anxiety, when it comes to OCD, when it comes to eating disorders, because guys, it is a living hell. It is a living hell that person has to live with and go through each and every day in their minds. So I just want to talk a little bit about what about my past history, what led me to developing my eating disorders, my anxiety, my OCD, my depression. And I'm going to go into part 2 of this video. I'm going to talk about kind of my recovery from that and what I learned from all this stuff, from my eating disorder and my OCD and anxiety, and how I've turned that into the position where I am now. Happily married, doing great in a career, finishing up a master's, just excited about life ahead. So please stay tuned. I hope you guys got a little something out of this first part. If you guys have any questions, maybe you're going through the same thing or whatever, leave some comments in the comment section below. If you don't feel comfortable, just reach out to me. I'm going to leave all my information in the description box. But hit that little notification button. Please go like, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned because part 2 is going to come out where I talk about how I use these past experiences to build to where I am now and how I'm going to help it build to my future. So thank you guys for tuning in. Remember, if you're going through, just keep going. Do not give up. There's going to be times when it feels like you want to. Reach out to somebody. Reach out to me. Reach out to a professional. Reach out to a friend. But know that you're not in it alone. You don't have to give up. Thank you guys for tuning in. Stay tuned. Part 2 is coming up soon.